How you doing, Met fans, and welcome back for another episode of the Terry Collins Show, presented by Tunnel of Towers, supporting America's greatest heroes. Donate just $11 a month by going to t2t.org. That's T2T.org. I'm John Arezzi. The Mets are returning home this week for 6 games. First, the series against the Detroit Tigers, and then part 1 of the 2026 Subway Series against the New York Yankees. A Subway Series typically is much anticipated, and if you're a Mets fan, this year is probably more about dreading the weekend with one of the best teams in the MLB taking on one of the worst. And even though the Mets just got back from winning a road trip, going 5-4, why does it feel like they've fallen deeper into the abyss? We will cover those topics on the leadoff with Laura Albanese and Sal Licata, and then later in the show, we'll feature Terry Collins answering a variety of questions in the Mets mailbag, courtesy of SNY TV. We will also have another Never Forget story with former Mets and Yankee skipper Joe Torre, who, along with Scott Brosius and Suzyn Waldman, tell about a heartfelt moment with Bernie Williams. And also Doms from Coachs Collectibles will stop by later in the show. But as we do week after week, we start off with the leadoff, so let's get to that right now. On today's leadoff, we welcome back to the show Newsday's Mets beat writer, analyst for SNY's Baseball Night in New York, special radio analyst, and co-host of the First Time Listener, Long-Time Caller podcast, Laura Albanese. And joining Laura today, we welcome back the host of SNY's Baseball Night in New York, and star of the popular Sal Licata show. We welcome Sal back to the show. Welcome back, Laura and Sal.
Thanks so much for having us.
Hi.
Pleasure to have you. And before we even get into the foray of the Mets, Laura, it seems like your portfolio of media is growing even more. I was watching the Picks broadcast on Friday night, and we have a couple of pictures here. And lo and behold, I was surprised. Pleasantly surprised when I saw Gary Apple and Todd Zeal welcome the on-field reporter for that game, and there you are.
Yeah, I was surprised too.
How did that happen? Give us the backstory.
I was there, and they were like, "Hey, Laura, would you be willing to do this?" And mind you, I have never done anything like this in my life. I am terrified, and so I'm like, "Sure, let's go." And I'm like, I'm popping on there. I've got my tomato dress. I've got sparkly socks. It's the height of professionalism. But
the tomato dress.
Yeah, but that's kind of the name of the game, especially when you're covering the Mets. You got to be prepared for everything.
Yeah, I was hopeful that during the game that maybe you'd be on there doing a "Let's Get Frank" segment or some type of foodie type of thing. But
I mean, you know me in the food reviews, so I was prepared just in case.
Yeah. But hey, listen, it's great to have you both, Sal. I'm sure everything's going well for you. I mean, I watch your pod. I, of course, see you every night on Baseball Night in New York. It's not an easy time to be following this team right now.
Yeah, well, it just makes it a lot less fun. I mean, we all have jobs to do, so we do it, and we love covering baseball and talking about baseball. And in particular for me, I love the Mets, but when it's this bad, it just makes it less fun. So we're trying to find the fun ways to be able to talk about this team where it just hasn't been very good.
Yeah. And they get back from a road trip, which started off really good. You're 5-2 and you're like, all right, we're whittling away at this deficit. And then what happens? 2 days, 2 losses in a row. They come back 5-4. And Laura, I feel like the Mets kind of went more of into an abyss than there wasn't anything positive to look upon the trip, other than like it could have been so much better. But it seems like we're now even deeper in the abyss.
Yeah, and I think you're looking at the first part of the trip, and you're seeing 2 very winnable games against the Angels and against the Rockies that they just kind of flubbed away. And then you saw them against the Diamondbacks, which it's a tiny step up from those 2 other teams. And it was just the way that they lost that I think was frustrating. One, because you're getting excellent pitching. I mean, you're seeing Clay Holmes doing things that really probably nobody really expected when he converted from the bullpen role to being a starter. And you're also seeing just the quality of the at-bats. And the quality of the at-bats, you're seeing everybody expanding the strike zone, and including Juan Soto, where this is one of the first times where he was just kind of like, I'm working on it. And usually Soto's like, everything's going to be fine. And he did also say that. But you can tell that, it feels like he's almost trying to take on the onus of carrying this offense a little bit, when you're seeing, Bo Bichette not having competitive bats. And frankly, I thought the absurd decision to have Andy Ibanez start at third. I understand platoon splits, but in this situation, you just need a secure glove and a guy like Brett Beatty to get going. So there was a few things at play here that really just didn't work out for the Mets.
Yeah, it's been the same thing over and over with this team, because you mentioned it, Laura, like, losing some games that maybe they should have won. That's been the story all year long. We know the obvious reasons why. They're not healthy. The guys who are healthy aren't performing. They're not hitting. But it just seems that they continue to find ways to lose ball games that they should win, and they're nowhere near good enough to do that. Their record should not be as bad as it is. They should not be the worst team in baseball. Even with all the injuries and underperformance, they still should be better. So it has been the perfect storm of just the things going the wrong way for this team, which has become infuriating to watch.
Yeah, I agree. And like, you add to that some of the updates we're getting on the injured players. You have Luis Robert Jr., you have Jorge Polanco, and it's just like, there's no timeline for these guys. No one's going to swoop in and say like, okay, Luis Robert's going to get back in here and he's going to propel this offense, because nobody knows when he's going to come back. You looked at Jorge Polanco, which is again, a situation where first it was the bursitis, and then it was the bone bruise on the wrist, and now it's the bursitis again, even though the bursitis is supposed to get worse, or was supposed to get better rather. And so you're in a situation, and you don't know necessarily when Lindor is going to come back, because he needs to get re-imaged. They need to make sure that it's actually just a strain and not a further injury to his Achilles. So, I mean, other than bringing up some minor league guys, which you can't rely on minor league guys to save a season, or, trying to basically tread water until the trade deadline, it's hard for Mets fans to really have much hope.
Yeah, that leads to my next question. I mean, what is worse? Is it an angry fan base, or is it an apathetic one? And where is this team heading with this fan base?
And I personally think it's apathetic, and I think that is clearly where they are heading, which is just not good for anybody, which is why we could talk about, well, you know what, maybe you bring up some of the younger players. At least then that apathy turns into some intrigue, where it may be too soon to see Ewing or Clifford or whatever, but at least there's intrigue there, where there's no point of watching Austin Slater hit third. Like, Austin Slater shouldn't be in the big leagues, let alone on the New York Mets, with the way that they were expected to perform throughout the course of this year. You mentioned Ibanez, like, what are we watching? I didn't think it was going to get any worse than MJ Melendez hitting third, and yet it's gotten that bad. Yeah, I know, and he's actually one of their better players, which is shocking. So I think fans, I can't speak for everybody. Me personally, I was angry, I was frustrated. Now I'm to the point where I don't expect them to be good, and it's the same thing. They don't hit until Bo Bichette can hit. They're not going to win any games until they can get these guys back healthy. And who the hell knows when that's going to be? Some of them have never been healthy in their careers, Robert and then Polanco. They're just not going to be any better. But I do think, Laura, that we're heading toward the stage, unfortunately, of apathy with this team.
Yeah, every once in a while, I just got back from the West Coast, so I had plenty of time on the plane, and I'll just be scrolling through the Mets subreddit, and they'll be talking about I don't have an emotional attachment to this team. And so while I understand the logic behind, say, blowing up the core, what David Stearns did, the truth is, when you're also not producing on the field and fans don't have an emotional connection, and there's almost like a lack of identity to a team, that's what's going to lead to apathy. So you are getting a slew of apathetic fans, and frankly, they're just fed up, because again, there's no light at the end of the tunnel situation where they can see things getting better. So, it's a little bit, it's rough right now, in that clubhouse, and it's rough right now for the fan base.
Yeah, I want to speak to it on that side, on the fan side of it, because as you both know, I go back since I was 9 in the 60s watching this, and apathy, once that sets in, it's hard for it to come back. It's hard for you to get excited again. And I think over the last season leading into this season, that once that fan base starts becoming apathetic, it's going to be very hard to get them back. Winning is always going to be the elixir, but when there's no hope. And I'm going to go back a lot of years. I'm going to go back 50 years to 77. The Mets were okay. 73, they were in the World Series. 74, they were competitive. 75, a little more competitive. But when they got rid of Seaver in 77, that's when, as a fan, like it was a diehard back then, was like, I don't care anymore. They just got rid of the heart and soul of this team, and I'm done. And that was ironically the year that the Yankees had brought in Reggie Jackson, and you had Thurman Munson, and you had Billy Martin at the helm, and you had the controversy, and you had the excitement. And most of my college buddies were Yankee fans. So I have to admit that I shut the book on the Mets until the franchise was sold in 1980. But that fan base eroded every year after that Seaver trade. It eroded. The attendance, 1.5 million, 1.3 million, 900,000. 1979, they did 700,000 in fans coming. People just didn't care. And although we have the richest owner in the game, the moves that have been made and getting rid of the heart and soul of the team, and which we'll get into in a little bit here, because I do want to discuss the comments from Nimmo and then the report about Pete's comment in a little bit. But that apathy, once that sinks in, that's going to be hard for it to turn around.
No, I agree. And you're also taking in the added layer that there might not be baseball next year, or there could be very limited baseball next year because of the CBA expiring. So, I mean, we're kind of in a situation right now where the fan base, again, has does not have much to hold on to. And if this team does continue to progress, they're going to have even less to hold on to when some of these pieces get traded at the deadline.
And I actually welcome these pieces getting traded at the deadline. I think, for me personally as a fan, I remember wanting to get to a point where you get an owner that's going to spend money, right? Get the Mets back in play. The Wilpons did that for years. Then they didn't. And then it was frustrating year after year after year, not going after the high-end free agents. In comes Steve Cohen, they do. And that hasn't worked. So with the first one with Lindor, okay, great. Here come the Mets. They have some success in 2022, fall on their face. 2023, no good. 2024, not good in the beginning, and then all of a sudden good. They sign Juan Soto, which is the greatest free agent signing for me ever. You steal him away from the Yankees, and just nothing is working. They've tried to be disciplined. They've tried to spend money in a smart way. They've tried to be ridiculous with even going after Correa, which that fell apart. And it just hasn't worked. Cohen's been here now for years. There's been no consistent winning. And I thought that was the one. Forget about World Series. At the very least, they should be able to have sustained success. And they just haven't had that happen. So I'm at a point where I'm looking to blow it up even more and just recalibrate everything. Trade these guys you can get anything back for. See what you have. Give Stearns another year to draft and develop, because I do think truly to see what a general manager can do, it takes years, unfortunately. So I would be willing to give him at least one more year beyond this and hope that it will lead to seeing some exciting, well-rounded ball players that can lead to a level of sustained success that we just have not seen, because I'm out of answers at this point. Spending money hasn't worked. Hiring the president, who we all thought was great, hasn't worked. Just nothing has worked for this team.
Right.
And go ahead, Laura.
No, and I think one of the bugaboos, one of the things that Stearns is possibly dealing with is that, he is trying to extract the most out of certain players, but these players already showed you who they are. So when you get a Freddie Peralta, you're excited because Freddie Peralta can pitch, but you also know that Freddie Peralta can't really pitch into the sixth inning. This is a known quantity. Luis Robert, he can be a really dynamic bat, but he's going to get hurt. This is a known quantity as well. You're going to get every once in a while a Clay Holmes, which maybe exceeds expectations, but you also have to be prepared for the idea that players show you who they are and you have to believe it. And I think sometimes he's fallen into that trap a little bit.
Yeah, I'm totally there with you, and I'm there with you, Sal, as well. Blow it up. I mean, I don't see anyone coming in to help this team and save this team, as Laura, you eloquently wrote in your column. Lindor is going to be out for who knows how long. You got these guys that were injury prone when they were brought in. So, I'm at the point where it's like, all right, let's blow it up and just kind of get rid of the pieces that are not working. And if it takes another year or so, I just think Cohen is embarrassed. He doesn't come out and talk much, but I think Steve Cohen, with the money that he invested, and when I'm looking at how much money he's shelling out, just take a look at Bo Bichette. He's getting $42 million, and then you put the luxury tax on top of that they had to pay. So that's over $90 million that he's invested in one player. And if the guy opts out, you're going to pay him $5 million to leave. I mean, Cohen has got to be embarrassed.
He should be embarrassed. I guarantee you he is embarrassed. The man with that amount of money and as much success as he's had in his life, he's a prideful guy. He's a competitive guy. So I'm sure he's embarrassed. But also you mentioned Bichette, and this is where it is bad moves that the Mets have made. It is some of it's poor performance, also bad luck. Their plan was to go get Kyle Tucker. Now, I'm not saying that would have worked out differently, but let's not make it like Bo Bichette was the big thing that they circled and said, we're going to go get Bo Bichette. It was kind of by default. They went all after Kyle Tucker, didn't get him. So now it's, okay, on to plan B or whatever. And then it's Bichette. And he's been terrible. There's no way to sugarcoat it. Bo Bichette has been god-awful. And one of the main reasons why they've been bad. Is he going to be this bad? Is he just not cut out for New York? Maybe. But the Mets have also, while Cohen specifically has been looking to spend more money, whether it's Yamamoto, whoever, they continue to get burned by guys, by their top choices signing elsewhere, and then they fall for the lesser guys or the secondary options, which we all thought were good moves. They just have not worked out. They can't win.
No, not at all. But when I get back to those comments, Sal, about Bo, is he ready or not ready for New York? I think there's a number of guys, and Nimmo, Brandon Nimmo came back, and I think his statements to the media in that gathering in the dugout, I think that was really insightful. What Nimmo had to say. It's like, here they are. They bring all of these guys in, and no one knows how hard it is to be in New York. I didn't know anything else. This is what I grew up in. I grew up in New York. I was accustomed to it. I knew what the pressures were from the media and the fan base and the city and all the things that had to do with it, the traffic, everything. And you bring all these guys in that were not battle tested for New York. And I think that has a lot to do with what's going on as well. Of course, they're not performing, but guys aren't fit for New York. And you had two guys that are not here anymore, Nimmo and Pete, who they were developed in this organization. And they stayed here for many years, and they were able to handle New York, where I think a lot of guys on this roster right now may not be equipped to handle the pressures of this city.
I think it's an interesting concept because I remember when I was growing up, that was one of the things that was growing up in Brooklyn and obviously following both the Mets and Yankees. That was consistently something that was discussed. Like, can the guy play in New York? Can the guy play in New York? And I noticed that as I started covering baseball professionally, that became a little bit less of a narrative. And I don't think it should be because there are elements to playing in a big market that can be overwhelming. Brandon Nimmo was talking about it. And again, it's not just, there's going to be more eyes on you. It's the fact that there is, a stark difference between having, 10 media members in the clubhouse and having one or two, which is what you're going to get in a New York Yankees or a New York Mets clubhouse. That is a lot of pressure. A guy like Nimmo, he was always in front of his locker. He was always taking questions, good, bad, no matter what. You have a guy who maybe was with the Brewers his entire career and, only knows a couple players. That's a very different experience. It's hard to tell, though, how much of that is a factor. When we talk about a guy like Bo Bichette, I mean, it's not like he was in a tiny, tiny market. He was much in a much smaller market. He's also been hitting into a whole lot of bad luck.
Yes.
But, a lot of it is it can be temperament. And there is something to be said about a guy like Alonso, a guy like Nimmo, even a guy like Jeff McNeil, who wore his heart on his sleeve. But the fact is that even when things were going badly, he knew kind of the turns of, I'm going to have to talk to the media. I'm going to have to do all of this. And there are guys who are like that, who maybe essentially grew up in smaller markets, who probably would not be able to handle it in the same way.
The only thing that I would say, and I do think that sometimes we get in a spot, and Cashman has been criticized for this as well as now David Stearns, where the analytical people don't value how a player is going to adapt or adjust to playing in New York. Okay, so we understand that that's been an issue for both the Mets and the Yankees. New York is just a different animal. And I think that the fans and media don't do the players any favors either. Not that they're supposed to, but especially the fans. Bo Bichette was getting booed the first homestand. Like, what are we doing here? 3 games in, the guy's getting booed. That's absurd. And maybe that snowballed to a point where he just couldn't find his way out of it. But to go back to the Nimmo and Alonso thing, yeah, those guys were here for years. Okay, great. The Mets didn't win. So I also don't like well, we miss Nimmo and we miss Pete. And yeah, there are elements that you miss, in particular of Pete Alonso playing every single day. But Pete Alonso was here. Brandon Nimmo was here. Jeff McNeil was here. The Mets failed in 2022. They were disaster in 2023. They failed ultimately in 2024 because they weren't good enough to where they could coast into the postseason. They barely made the postseason, and they went on a run. You're not going to take that away from them. But then again, they failed in 2025. So they had multiple years as a group to figure it out. And they, too, could never sustain any kind of success. It was the right move to move on from those guys. The people who they were replaced with, you could question whether that was the right move or not, or should the Mets have done more, like move on from Francisco Lindor as well. But they're two separate things to me. The New York aspect, which I think is real, and looking back, we should have kept them together. That to me is not real. They had to be broken up because they have definitive years where they did not get the job done as a group.
I tend to agree with you with one caveat where it felt like the 2024 team, even to a certain extent, the 2025 team was one big piece away from actually being able to kind of like go over that hill. I mean, Clay Holmes pitching like Clay Holmes is pitching now would be a huge piece. Having Nolan McLean for an entire season, that would be a huge piece. I mean, and then you add to that maybe one extra bat. I think they're closer. And I only say that because right now the team that is constructed the way it is looks so far away. They look bigger than one piece away.
Yeah, they certainly do. But so I want to get back to Alonso and Pete. Him leaving. All right. So they didn't win in those years. So do you blow up the team? You have a guy that's proven in New York. He posted every day. He hit in the clutch last year, especially. But sometimes it's when you take out the heart and soul of a team. All right. So you don't really care. Is the fans loved Pete? Pete was the all-time home run leader. Pete had a legacy here. So that move still is I'm never going to forget it. Like I never forgot Seaver, whether or not it's just me being fanboy or whatever. But I still think that move was just not the right one, getting rid of Pete Alonso.
I think
even Nimmo in a way.
No, Nimmo had to go. I'll vehemently disagree with you there. And not because Nimmo's a bad guy, because, okay, so you want to bring Pete back. You want to bring Nimmo back. Well, then you get the same team. Now, you could make the argument where Laura's saying, okay, well, if they had the same team, but they have McLean and Holmes pitching the way it is and Peralta, maybe they'd be better. Maybe. I would not be willing to run that risk because I watched that group and I don't believe that they were good enough ever. Yeah. I saw them get punked by the Braves for 3 straight games. All they had to do was win 1. They got punked in the postseason. They stunk for the better part of the first half of 2024, and they collapsed in the second half of 2025. With all that being said, the mistake to me, and I don't know what the ultimate deciding factor in this was, but I would have brought Pete Alonso back as a primary DH. Because I think the things, like Laura mentioned this before, and I think it's a great point. You don't know what you could count on with other players coming in here. Like, okay, well, Robert's hurt. Yeah, his upside may be good, but he's always hurt. Or Polanco, same thing. Like, he hits in the clutch, but there are things there that players have told you throughout the course of their career that sometimes you ignore. What Pete Alonso has told you throughout the course of his career is that he is going to play every day and he is going to hit with power. That's the floor. So even if you extend for $150 million or whatever he got with Baltimore, the floor is that he is going to play and hit with power. And that is something that I would have bet on more so than I would have, let's say, Francisco Lindor, who's an aging, declining shortstop. And maybe his game, an element of being youthful and speed and all that, is going to decline as he gets older. That's what I said in the offseason. However, at the end of it, bottom line, I wanted to change the look. And they did that. Unfortunately, it just did not work. So I understand fans being upset that they let their guys go. The results, though, are, it's obviously been terrible, but it's still early. And that plan never really got a chance to form with all the injuries that we've seen here in the first month plus of the season.
Yeah, I agree with Sal. I mean, Nimmo, I also understand kind of parting ways with him. As wonderful as a person as he was, trust me, he was a media darling. He would answer every question all the time. But with Alonso, man, I mean, Mark Vientos, I was pretty impressed with him during this road trip. But I mean, again, like you're in a situation where you have a guy who plays 162. You can talk about every other number that you want in the world, but that 162 is more important than people think. And you're certainly seeing that now with how injury riddled this team is.
Yeah, there's without a doubt it's injury riddled, and And the lineup keeps moving and changing. And I want to get both of your opinions on moving Soto to the leadoff spot and if that's helped or hurt him. There's no one protecting him, but give me your assessment of Soto leading up in the lineup, batting first.
I kind of like it. I actually like it a good bit. I understand that he's slumping right now. But I think Soto in the leadoff spot is helpful just because like the way that this lineup is constructed, you just need him to get as many at bats as possible. And sometimes it's as simple as that. I also like it because you're seeing the bottom half of for parts of this road trip, you see the bottom part of the lineup heat up. And so when they're creating traffic for Soto ahead of him, I think that's a really good thing. The key here really is getting Bo Bichette going because you need him in that 2 hole, actually being able to drive some of these guys in. So Soto will eventually do his damage. I don't think it matters where in the lineup for him personally that he hits. But again, when there's nothing happening after that, that's where you get into trouble.
Where do you think Laura Bichette would prefer to hit? Because you mentioned Soto doesn't seem to care. He'll hit wherever. Me personally, I think ideally with a lineup that's strong, I'd rather have Soto hit third. Yes. I understand why he would hit first and second to get more at bats, but it doesn't seem like he cares. Whereas maybe Bichette, who's trying to get acclimated, he looked at his best so far when Soto was behind him in that order. When Bichette was leading off, I think it was, right? And they had Soto 2 when Lindor was out. Do you have any idea on Bichette preferring? What's going to get Bichette going? What would he prefer to try to get him going?
I mean, the one thing that Bichette, I mean, like he has to make some better swing decisions. I feel like sometimes he's just swinging out of his shoe tops, especially. He's always been like a very aggressive hitter, and it's worked for him. He is going to be a guy who swings at the first pitch. He's going to be a guy who, like, with 2 strikes is going to swing away, and he makes contact. But especially if you looked at yesterday's game, his first 2 at-bats were completely identical. Swing at the first pitch, all right, fly out to right field. Swing at the first pitch, fly out to right field. And it's over and over and over again. So Bichette is one of those guys where I feel like, you know that old cliche where they say a guy's like 1 hit away. If something drops in, suddenly he's going to start getting going. Just because if you look at his peripheral numbers, that should have probably happened already. That being said, yeah, does he probably prefer to hit in front of Soto? Who wouldn't? Right. Of course. I think that's the case. But if he's not going to produce, I don't know that you can risk, just another empty out and then Juan Soto coming up and hitting a monster home run with nobody on base. And now the Mets have drawn between, within 5 runs of the lead or whatever else it is, because that's what we're seeing over and over again.
Yeah, it's been rough to watch all of this. And I feel for Bo because I saw him, how good he was with Toronto and the clutch hitting and everything else he accomplished there. So it's tough to watch. This could be a tough week to watch as well as the Mets trudge home. They got 3 against the Tigers and then part 1 of the Subway Series against the Yankees coming up this weekend. It could be a really rough Subway Series for the Mets this weekend.
It's funny how it's funny you mentioned that because I think this could really, not to overstate things, this could really be a turning point. If they get walloped by the Yankees, we're talking about, Cohen feeling embarrassed and kind of like having it happen on that stage. I think really kind of drives the point home more than otherwise it would be.
And meaning like what? You talking about potential manager or are we talking about just roster?
I think Carlos Mendoza is more or less safe for now, but it's a possibility. Yeah. I just could see, like Cohen kind of being like, hey, we're going to start the fire sale. Like this could be something where if they're embarrassed in a large scale, immediate action is probably going to ensue.
And it will be justifiable and understandable because the fans are already angry. We're heading toward apathy as we talked about it. I know for me personally, as somebody who was at the first ever Subway Series game and used to go to at least one, I would go to all 3 at Shea and then 1 in Yankee Stadium. They used to alternate years. And then when they started playing both together, like I lived for the Subway Series. And from a Met fan perspective, it kind of was our World Series, certainly back then in 97, 98, 99. I can't even stand. Unfortunately, I think I'm going to go Friday just because I committed to go months ago. I don't even like, I don't want to be there. I don't want to see the Yankee fans celebrating. The Yankees bludgeon bad teams. The Mets are a bad team. The Yankees are primed to bludgeon the Mets. And would you expect anything less than a sweep from the Yankees at this point? How are the Mets going to get a game? They can't beat bad teams, let alone a team with the Yankees firepower and their pitching. So, and I know baseball, you got to play the games. That's baseball, Suzyn. We get that. But on paper, I think the Mets are in for this is going to be maybe the nail in the 2026 coffin at the hands of the Yankees.
Yeah, I'm right there, Sal. This is the first year that I am not flying to New York to see the Subway Series. I go every year.
You want my tickets? You could have them.
No,
I'm looking for an excuse to get out of
it. No, I got to do some business also with Howard Johnson this weekend. Howard's baseball academy is 1 block away from where I live. So he's been on the show and he's going to do some stuff for Tunnel of Towers. So I'm glad it was scheduled, but I wasn't going up there. I'd canceled it a while ago. And I think it could be a really ugly place this weekend. And the other thing I wouldn't want to see is, like, because of where the Mets are in the standings, where the Yankees are in the standings, what's going on, that Citi Field is going to be filled with Yankee fans this weekend.
There's going to be a lot of them there. You know, it's going to be filled with Yankee fans and Mets fans who are booing their own players. It's going to be a tough look. Yeah, it's going to be very tough, and I don't want to, I couldn't go through that. But we're talking about Mendy. We're talking about the fire sale, a potential fire sale. Usually the benchmark is kind of like, let's take a look at where we are on Memorial Day and see where the team needs to go. We've reached that point with this 2026 version of the Mets pretty quickly. So those wholesale changes on May 31st may be coming a little bit earlier, but if it continues the way it's continuing, there'll be, as Laura said, a dramatic fire sale before the trade deadline.
The one thing, first of all, I don't even think that I don't even know if I would label it fire sale because I'm not so sure what they have to sell. Like,
Peralta,
I mean, who is it? Peralta and Bichette? I mean, maybe that
and Clay.
Well, see, now that's to me. That to me is Peralta. Yes, I mean Devin Williams. If you get something here, yes. Bo Bichette, yes. I don't know if I would give up Clay Holmes because the Mets are in a spot where you don't need to totally sell. You should be looking. You could trade some guys you don't think are part of the future. Clay Holmes could be an answer to be a part of the future. So I'd look to maybe lock him up more so than I would move on. But I will just say before we get to that point, and I know the feeling is that we are there already, or if we're not, we're going to get there. I think it was in 2024, June 3rd was the day that they were 11 games under 500. So as bad as it seems now, it was just as bad in 2024 with no hope in sight. And I do believe this team is more talented than that team was. So to me, there's still a chance with the way the landscape of baseball is that over the next few weeks, I don't anticipate it getting better, but they were 11 under on June 3rd of 2024, and they made the NLCS. Crazier things have happened before. That's all that I'm going to say. We're not at that date yet where it's like, okay, now they're officially dead. But
there's no Jose Iglesias or J.D. Martinez walking through that door, is there?
I mean, there is a J.D. Martinez. He just doesn't have a bat in his hand.
He just doesn't have a uniform on and a bat in his hand. But yeah,
Lindor, I don't know when Lindor's coming back, but if he could come back before, I'm not trying to be rosy-colored glasses here. I'm just pointing out the facts that I did say that team in 2024 was as dead as you can possibly be, and they somehow went to the NLCS. So before we start thinking about, selling and if it's a big if they could get Polanco back, if they could get Lindor back, if Bichette could start hitting, maybe things would look different over the next few weeks.
Luis Robert,
yeah. The thing is that the feeling around this team is a little bit different than the feeling around the 2024 team. And it goes back, I don't like to overstate the whole intangibles thing or whatever else, but there does seem to be a lack of cohesion and identity. And the 2024 team, that was something that they were able to kind of turn on its head in the middle of the season. This team has yet to prove to me that they kind of have that sort of all right, pass the baton, pick the guy up next to you sort of mentality. And until I see that, then I don't necessarily know if I have the belief that they can turn things around. And part of it has to do with the fact that because so many guys are injured, they really haven't had a chance to come together as a team. I mean, that is a factor.
Yeah. Well, Let's see where everything goes. A month from now, we could be singing a different tune. But
John, what are you going to do with the podcast if Terry Collins gets asked to be the bench coach or something under Carlos Beltran? You think about that?
Yeah, I mean, you always think about it, and I always think, Terry is going to be 77 this year, and how long is he going to want to do this? And every year he kind of says, I don't know if I want to do it. And then he comes back. But yeah, if he gets high, I had that situation with Gibby.
All right.
I was doing a podcast with Gibby every week, and then the Mets hired him. So I had to pivot.
All right. So you're experiencing this.
But I hope TC stays for a long time. And if imagine if TC's a bench coach, I'd love to see that actually for him. I'd love to see him get one more shot as a bench coach.
I wouldn't mind it either. I mean, not that I'm rooting for anybody to get fired, but if it means TC gets back in uniform, sign me up.
Yeah, let's do it. I'd love to see that.
Right. I'd like to parlay my friendship with him maybe into being a ball boy for once. I can dress
there
up.
You go. There you go.
It's doable.
He's got so much fire, and that's what when we talk about TC's praises, I mean, he is just such a remarkable guy. He's got so much energy, and he's out there and he gives his opinions, and he's so beloved now. I mean, the fire that he had back in the day, when I go back and I watch some of the post-game press conferences and just the statements that he used to make and the on-field arguments that he used to have, the way he used to fight for his guys. I think we missed that. I think we missed that fire. And I miss a guy even like Buck, because Buck was so analytical and smart. And I love Mendoza as well. Mendoza's been, as you would say, he's not been given the very best deck or hand of cards to play with. Because you feel for the guy. You feel for the guy.
I do not think he's a bad manager. I think, like any manager, he's made some questionable choices. And like we all consider in this landscape, how much of these day-to-day choices are actually under the manager's control too. So that's always something that you have to kind of consider these days.
And when you see the lineups that they've been running out there with like Austin Slater hitting third, to me, that's not a manager putting that lineup together. That is the front office analytical team saying, hey, this is a lefty. We're depleted. We need to load up our righties. And this is how you should do that. Roughly. I don't know the exact inner workings of it, but I'm smart enough to know that a baseball lifer would not under any circumstance want to load up a lineup with guys just because they swing from a certain side of the plate. Like that doesn't compute. And if that is on Mendy, I don't know what to tell you. But if I'm going down, I'm not going down with Austin Slater hitting third. I'll tell you that. Or Abanya's playing third base.
No.
Agreed.
On that note, before we let you guys go, we certainly would love to have everybody out there know where they could read, watch you, find you. We'll start off with Laura and then go to Sal. And once again, we thank you guys for coming on.
So you can read me at newsday.com/Mets. You can also find me at Albanese Laura on X, Laura Writes Stuff on Instagram, and my podcast, First Time Listener, Long Time Caller, Spotify, Apple, all that good stuff.
Yeah, same thing as Laura, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. You could get the Sal Licata Show, and then Baseball Night in New York, Monday through Friday on SNY at 6 p.m.
Great to have you both, and we hope to see you both again on the Terry Collins Show real soon. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Some more big announcements this week from our presenting sponsor, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. And it started earlier this month, and the Tunnel to Towers Steel Across America tour is now on the road. Tunnel to Towers is bringing an authentic piece of the World Trade Center steel from New York City to California and back. The steel has already been to Ground Zero and the Flight 93 Memorial in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. On May 22nd, it'll be at home Lone Depot Park in Miami for the Mets-Marlins game. And this is part of Tunnel to Towers' mission to assure we never forget the 9/11 terror attacks. For more information on the foundation and the steel tour schedule, go to t2t.org. And one of this year's most iconic events is returning on Sunday, June 7th. Tunnel to Towers will host its annual New York City Tower Climb. Participants will be able to run up 104 flights of stairs at One World Trade Center. The event is a way to pay tribute to the hundreds of firefighters who climbed the stairs at the Twin Towers on 9/11, and they worked to save lives. The proceeds will benefit Tunnel to Towers and the Captain Billy Burke Foundation. Captain Burke was killed while rescuing civilians at the Trade Center. So it'll be a big event, as it has been each and every year they do it. It typically sells out. You can't register. Thousands of people participate in this climb up the Freedom Tower. For more information, go to t2t.org. And Tunnels to Towers is also proud of the new May and George Siller Scholarship programming they've started. Named for the parents of Stephen Siller, the program will help pay for college or trade schools for the children of all Foundation home recipients. That means the kids in those nearly 2,000 families will have their futures transformed. They're eligible for scholarships. But this doesn't happen without you. The foundation relies on donors to give $11 a month at t2t.org. That's T2T.org. And we'll be back with that special Mets mailbag with Terry Collins and SNY host NIki Lattarulo, courtesy of SNY, right after we debut this new message from Carlos Mendoza on behalf of the Tunnel to Towers Foundation.
Hey, I'm Carlos Mendoza, Mets manager. The Mets go out of their way to support our military families and our first responders. That is also the mission of the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. They transform the life of men and women who protect us and keep us safe. It's a first-class organization. They care about people, how much they care about families. Just $11 a month can make a big difference. Go to t2t.org for more information on how you can help. Let's go Mets, and let's help Tunnel to Towers.
I'm NIki Lattarulo, and today I'm joined by former Mets manager and SNY analyst, Terry. Thank you so much for joining us here on Mets Mailbag.
Well, that's nice to be on. I'm anxious to see how. I know this is a new show. I can't wait to see how it goes.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions. So just before we get started, every week you can go to Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to look for a post from SNY's account asking you as the fans to submit your questions to the show. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can also drop your questions in the comment section below. So Terry, let's get started. You ready to go?
Okay.
All right. So our first question comes from Andres Victoria on Twitter. And he said, I know every manager is different, but how would you address the team's struggles if you were managing them today?
Yeah, losing streaks are not fun. And everybody's has them. Every team in the season, during the season, is going to have some type of a losing streak. What you try to do, for me, you got to remain as positive as you can. The one thing that happens on teams is guys, they get frustrated. And so they try to do too much. They want to be the guy that breaks them out of the losing streak. And that's not how you do it. You just got to continue to play the game and try to put your players in the situations that their strengths play and that you get the most out of them. You try to make it fun a little bit. I had a losing streak in Anaheim one year, and we decided we were going to use one bat. So we took the guy who had the hottest bat, and everybody on the team used it one night. And we won. And, it was just something to try to let them know that, hey, look, the game is still fun. It's even though it's miserable losing, but you gotta, when they come to the ballpark, they got to know that there's a little still fun to get out on the field and play.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's more mental than physical when the losing streak gets long. So sometimes you just have to do some funky things to break out of that streak. Maybe the Mets should start using one bat. We can suggest that as well. Our next question comes from Cassidy Shea, and she said, what is the practice of constantly DFAing players after a few days due to the clubhouse morale? The Mets have a constant revolving door of players being signed and then released after a day or two.
Yeah, that really is a good question. That's a better question, obviously, for the general manager, because the manager really has nothing to say about those kind of things. That's all business moves. But there are certain guys who, when they get DFA'd, there's certainly an effect in the clubhouse. But the one thing you try to do, you try to address that stuff before the season starts. But there's going to be things that happen that are out of the player's control or out of the manager's control that occur because it's still, even though you don't want to admit it, it's still business. So what they have to understand is, there's going to be times when something might happen. You may not like it, but the only thing you can concern yourself with is how you're playing.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, these guys know that it's a business, they're professionals, but it's not ever fun to see someone get DFA'd. Our next question comes from Paul Schnagelhaft on Facebook. Paul, I'm sorry if I just butchered your last name. How annoying is it as a coach to get asked questions like, do you feel like your job is in jeopardy, or do you think you could turn this around?
Well, it's annoying. We're all human beings, and and when you're going through the one thing we know, NIki, the one thing I can tell you, when you sign on to be a manager of a Major League Baseball team, or they'll coach or a football team or a basketball team, there's a good chance that you're going to get fired. So those questions, you're going to expect to get those questions. And the one thing you can't concern yourself with is anything but trying to do what you do every day, and that's get your team ready to try to win. It comes with the territory. You try to downplay it as much as you can, but there's nothing you can do about it because they're still going to be asked. So it's annoying, but it's part of the job, and you just got to move on from that.
I have a follow-up question on that. Do you feel like when you're managing in New York, there's just like an extra bit of pressure from the fans, and once things start to go wrong, they really start coming for your job?
Well, sure. You're the easiest target, as I try to follow what's going on with the Mets right now, and I see, of course, Carlos is leaving them out to hang. But I'll tell you what, I appreciate what the front office has done. They've come to they've got his back. They said, hey, this is not a managerial problem. And so, he's going to continue to do what he does best. And that's, you got to be yourself. I remember Tommy Lasorda told me years ago, no matter what's going on other places, when you walk through those clubhouse doors, you got to be the same guy. No matter, your job may be in jeopardy and all the other things, but you can't let that affect the way you deal with your players. And I remember one time in New York, I had a sports writer tell me the first week on the job that I was hired until the team's any good, and then I'm going to get fired. And I said, well, if that's what happens, that's what happens. But, to get one of those 30 jobs is hard. So I was going to enjoy it as long as I possibly could.
Yeah, and I think Carlos has done a good job at remaining positive. And I was glad that David came out and said he's our guy right now to kind of put those rumors to bed, because it has to wear on him too, being a manager and hearing those questions day after day.
NIki, the other thing, the players get involved because they go to the players and say, do you think you should fire the manager?
Yeah.
And they look for that one guy who might say, maybe we need a change here. And bingo, then everything breaks loose.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it was good that they kind of just put it to bed, and now they can just focus on winning. Streak Boomin on Instagram said, out of the 7 years you managed the Mets, what player during your tenure would you like to be slotted into this year's lineup?
Well, obviously that's I've had some really good ones, but obviously the obvious one is David Wright. I mean, they've been looking for a third baseman. Well, you got a 7-time All-Star. I'd like to have him playing third when he's healthy, hitting third. That would kind of change that lineup around. But I had another guy named Yoenis Cespedes that he might help that team today too, because he produced. He turned when we got him in 2015. We became a different team.
Yeah, you mentioned the third base. This Mets team kind of also has a first base situation going on. And Albert E. Lewis on Twitter said, do you think the Mets will find a permanent first baseman this season?
I do. I do believe that's going to happen, whether it's Polanco, whether it's Beatty, whether it's Vientos. I really think, it's really hard, to be a platoon player, especially when you're young, because you're used to playing every day. I mean, when you got to the big leagues, it's because you were an everyday player. When you get to the big leagues and all of a sudden, you're not in there. Nope, now it's a left-hander today. Oh, I get to play today. Sometimes you never really get yourself into a situation where you can get on a roll. So I think they're going to find somebody and put them over there and let them get the majority at bats at first base.
Yeah, I think the first base issue is very interesting to see it just be a kind of a revolving door. But hopefully, as the season progresses, they get more answers at that position. NIki the Good on Twitter said, "Hey Terry, if you had the technology to look at plays and review them, which would help your team, would you do that or just ignore
it?" Well, it was ignored for a lot of years. where today it's not. So I think you've got to use the technology today to your advantage if you can. I'm not sold on a couple things, but obviously there's so much money involved in the games to where teams are losing pennants by a game where, hey, look, the technology can say the call was wrong. Let's change it, and then all of a sudden it changes the entire outcome of the season. The way the fan bases are, they can get it. So yeah, you've got to use it. What's available to you today, and use it to your advantage if you can.
I'm actually curious because when you managed, like, none of this stuff was really in play. But if you had to pick one, whether it was ABS, pitch clock, or just the review, which one would you want to have when you were managing?
I would do just the review. Yeah. I think that's the most important one because I remember when the review started, NIki, I had an umpire tell me one time he was shocked to see how many plays that were, just bang, bang plays that because the speed of the game at the major league level is so fast that these guys said, I can't believe I missed that I didn't get that call right. And so I think replay itself is probably the biggest change.
It's really interesting to think about, like, when I was growing up, there was none of that. And now when you see it in fast motion, it's so fast that you're like, okay, I get why there's mistakes. So the reviews should have always been a thing. It really does change the game. But I also love the pitch clock. It keeps things moving. Okay. Sports and Food on Twitter said, hey, do you think it's a good idea to bring back Wilmer Flores? He's in the Mexican League batting 400.
Well, we just talked about the situation that they have, and that's the first base situation. And I think this guy did a pretty good job last year in San Francisco. I think he had 85 RBIs or something. He's a pretty good bat. That's a good spot for him. I was shocked that he didn't get a job with the year he had last year of driving in runs. So certainly, I know the fan base would love to have Wilmer back. So hopefully, if he gets a chance, they get a chance. They need a guy. That'd be a tremendous thing for the fans of the Mets to have Wilmer Flores get back in that uniform.
Yeah, and you never know. One guy could spark something with this team. Guido Treed on Instagram says, what was your favorite moment as a manager?
Well, God, I had so many tremendous ones. Probably two stand out the most. One, obviously, was when we beat the Cubs and we were going to go to the World Series that's one of the greatest moments. And if you're in baseball, especially as long as I was, that was a huge moment. But to see Johan Santana pitch that no-hitter, that was a pretty special moment. It affected a lot of people, a lot of the fans loved it. I've heard about it ever since the day it happened. And those two moments I would have to say stick out as much as any.
Yeah, I always remember the no-hitters. I feel like there just hasn't been as many now just because pitchers don't go as far into games. But it's so awesome to see. And you're just holding your breath at the ninth inning, just waiting. Carlos Ugaldi on Facebook said, your honest opinion on analytics being such a big part of today's game?
Well, I understand the use of them. I don't think it's that big a deal. First of all, NIki, I can tell you, I don't need analytics to tell me that one of my pitchers is hanging too many sliders, and that his spin rate on his slider isn't very good or his curveball isn't very good. Your eye can tell you that. I knew exactly that who on my team could hit Roy Halladay or Max Scherzer and who couldn't. But I also know one thing: when big league players, especially the good players, when they get hot, they don't care who's on the mound. When they're seeing that ball good, they're going to hit them. So I don't need somebody to tell me what the numbers say that I should be doing this or I should be doing that. And the other thing, there are nights when, and I've seen it, I had a great pitcher in Anaheim named Chuck Finley told me about pitching. He said, Terry, there's nights it's easy. There's nights it's just working. The ball's coming out of your hand good. You've got a feel for your curveball. You've got a feel for your split. And there's other nights where you battle just to get through the first two innings, and you look up in the third and fourth inning, you got 65 or 70 pitches, and you're out of gas. So you don't really need numbers to say, hey, look, after he gets to 70 pitches, you got to take him out, because there are nights when it's working, and he could throw 95 pitches or 105 pitches that night, because that's a good night. But what they try to do is worry about the next start, and there's nothing to dictate how the next start's going to be.
Yeah. Was there ever a specific analytic that you felt useful?
Well, I'm going to tell you a real fast story, NIki. Years ago, I was in the minor leagues with the Dodgers. There was a pitcher named Sandy Koufax who was a pretty good pitcher at one time.
Of course.
He used to come around, and he'd be in spring training, and he would talk to our pitching coaches about finding the ability to get one more rotation on your curveball, to have a better grip on your curveball, to get one more rotation. This 2 years ago, one of my best friends, Dave Wallace, went to a pitching clinic and pitching camp, and he saw this camera that they had, and everybody talks about rotation. Do you know how many times the ball spins on a curveball from a pitcher's hand to home plate? 13.
I was going to say 12. Okay, I was close.
You hear if people are talking about 3,200 times. Well, yeah, in a minute, maybe.
Yeah.
But it only takes a second to get to home plate. The ball spins 13 times. So if you think about what Sandy said, to get one more rotation, how much better your curveball would be with just one more rotation. So, those are the things that, and I think, okay, yeah, I get that. Now, there are guys who can't do it. There are guys who just can't throw curveballs. Noah Syndergaard had a great slider, but he never was able to really develop a good curveball, even though he was a big guy. So there are guys who can do it, and there are guys who can't, and that's the job of the pitching coach, to find the guy and find the grip that's going to maximize their pitches. And again, you don't need numbers to tell you that he's got to get a better rotation on certain pitches. You can see it. You can see how hitters react. So, but those are areas that that's why the good coaches are hard to find. And when you find them, you better keep them.
Yeah, it's very interesting, all the stuff they have. Now, when I was at spring training, I really got to see all the technology that they have, especially in the pitching lab. And it's crazy how things have evolved, and it just gives them so many more resources. But sometimes I feel like it could be a double-edged sword where you start thinking too much about the analytics because you know too much.
Well, I had a minor league player tell me one time he was worried, he was really working hard on getting better exit velocity. And I watched him play for 4 nights, and he struck out 13 times. You might want to start out by learning how to hit, and then worry about it. Hit the ball in the middle of the bat, it's gonna come.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword. Fig Takari on Instagram said, "Terry, do you miss us as much as we miss you?"
I do. There's of all the things, there are things I don't miss, but I miss the excitement. I miss the competitiveness. I miss the fan base. I mean, I'm blessed. I get it. I come to New York for certain appearances and things, and there's not one day that I walk down the street that I'm not stopped 10 times and talk about 2015 or talk about 2016 or talk about, David Wright or somebody else. So I miss that. I miss that part of it.
Yeah, definitely very loved by Mets fans. Caleb Reader on Instagram said, "What was your favorite jersey the Mets wore during your managerial tenure?"
Very easy. The white one, the white jersey with obviously the blue outlined in orange. I grew up a huge fan of the Detroit Tigers, who I used to think had the whitest uniforms in baseball.
Yeah.
I get arguments today about the Yankees and how they don't have various jerseys. I love white jerseys. And to me, there's only one team that should wear pinstripes, and that's the team on the other side of town. So I loved our white uniforms. They were beautiful. They were that was when we wore those jerseys. I love those games.
Okay, let me actually follow up on that. What's your take on the City Connects? Do you like them, or do you like the classic jerseys only?
I'm a classic jersey guy.
So overall, you just don't like any of the City Connects?
Not a one. I get it. I know it's a marketing tool. I get it. But, orange and blue, and now at certain nights you're going to wear purple and black. I don't get that. I don't get that. So that's just
I agree.
I'm an old timer, and it's I love that. I love those uniforms. That's why I said I just I couldn't wait to when I got to the big leagues in Houston. We wore white, and I remember the Dodgers one year. Mr. O'Malley said, "You're going to wear white at home and gray on the road. You're not wearing blue jerseys." And so, I said, that's, for me, that is part of baseball, is the heritage of it all. So I love those white jerseys.
I agree. I like the old school look. Even when they started putting the patches on, I was like, that kind of takes away from the uniform, but I get it. It's all about the marketing these days.
I totally understand too. So.
All right. We have one more from Rufina Ramos on Facebook. He said, "What's your biggest positive note so far in the season?"
Oh gosh, probably Clay Holmes. I mean, my God Almighty, what a start he's had. That, and you're talking about losing streaks, and you can run Holmes and you run Nolan McLean out there. You're not. I'm shocked that they had that long of a losing streak because those guys stop streaks now. So I just think he's off to a great start. I think obviously it's good to have Soto back in the lineup, but I really think Clay is the one that really has been the biggest surprise for me.
Yeah, if the pitching could just hold it down, the offense has to get it back together and things will go right. It's only May. Things can only go up from here.
Yeah, I totally agree. You and I, we can talk about the importance of pitching every day. I mean, that's what that guy in that bump is. If you got a good one, that's why when I was there, when I had those great young pitchers, there wasn't a day I left my apartment that I said, we don't have a chance tonight, because I knew my guy had a chance to pitch a shutout.
Exactly. So if the offense just steps it up a little bit, things can only go up from here from the Mets. Terry, thank you so much for joining us here on Mets Mailbag.
It was a very cool mailbag segment with Terry and NIki from SNY, and there were so many great questions there for TC. And when I saw that, I knew that it would be really cool to run that right here on the Terry Collins Show. So I'm glad we're able to do that. Now it's time for our Never Forget segment, and this week we're featuring bonus footage from the Tunnel to Towers Foundation documentary, Never Forget How Baseball Helped New York Heal. This week, we have former New York Mets and Yankee manager Joe Torre, along with former Yankee Scott Brosius and Yankee announcer Suzyn Waldman, and they remember the effect Yankee great Bernie Williams made on a 9/11 victim's family member during the aftermath of the attacks. So that's an amazing story that we'll show you. And we're also going to honor U.S. Navy Petty Officer Paul Hurley, who was given a mortgage-free smart home by T2T after losing his leg serving this country. Let's hear both of these heartwarming stories right now.
The armory was where all the family members were waiting for results from the DNA results. And I, again, at this point in time, I didn't think it was our place to go in there. We're baseball players, but so what? They're certainly dealing with something much more important than winning and losing,
Do we really belong here? I mean, these people are just going through the worst time of their life right now, and what can we offer? And then I remember Bernie Williams, and Bernie just, and we know Bernie's personality, and he's just that quiet, humble kind of personality. And as we were walking up to this family, he just came over, and all he said to her is, he introduced himself, and he said, "You look like you could use a hug." And she just grabbed him and just started sobbing. And I'm like, that's why we're here.
That's Bernie. Kindest human being ever. Wanted to do the right thing. It was just, he is like that. I mean, he's one of those people that just, he wanted to help and didn't know what to do, but he did know what to do.
And that sort of started things flowing, because from there, other parts of other families would come and they'd have photos of their loved ones, wearing Yankee jerseys or Yankee caps. And I think it was in that I realized and came to terms with the fact that we have a responsibility as baseball people. But we spent some time in there. It was very powerful, needless to say. But it looked like we distracted them somewhat.
Today we're giving a brand new smart home to one of our great heroes, Paul Hurley, and his family. He gave so much in sacrifice by being injured in a line of duty in the military. Wow. This is a wonderful home designed especially for Paul and his injury. When Tunnel to Towers turns over this home today, it'll be mortgage-free, debt-free, and they'll be able to spend their money on things for their family.
I come from a military family. I grew up on military bases and kind of seeing the sacrifices that everybody was making, and that was a big motivation for me wanting to serve. I was in the Navy. Served for about 4.5, 5 years. It was great. Camaraderie it doesn't compare to anything else that I've experienced in my life. I got hurt and I lost my leg. I didn't quite understand initially what that meant. It was a very difficult transition, realizing that everybody else that I had been serving with, they're still over there doing it. And, I'm back sitting in a hospital room trying to learn how to walk again. I got a phone call. It was somebody from Tunnel to Towers. Said, congratulations, your family was accepted in this program. And I remember it's just kind of an out of body. It's like, is this real? Is this really happening? I was so excited.
The house is absolutely everything we could ever imagine and dream of, for sure.
Wow.
Besides you choosing, Paul, besides you choosing.
Tunnel to Towers is a selfless organization that has changed so many lives of people that have done so much for the country. I'm so thankful and grateful to have an organization like this in my life, to have people that care.
Join us in supporting our nation's heroes. Go to T2T.org to make a positive impact.
We will feature another Never Forget story next week on the show. And a reminder, you can watch the 1-hour documentary on how baseball helped heal New York right now on Fox Nation. Coachs Collectibles is your go-to source for guaranteed 100% authentic and unique sports memorabilia. And as we do from time to time here on the show, we welcome the man who makes it all happen. Dom from Coachs Collectibles. Dom, welcome back to the Terry Collins Show.
Thank you, John. Always a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you guys. And we got some more fun and exciting new stuff coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the jacket, by the way. You're wearing
a
vintage
retro
satin jacket.
Yeah, retro starter jacket. This is like 90s vintage stuff that was a brand has made the comeback, and they brought back the original starter jackets.
Yeah, that's so cool. When I was a kid growing up, I used to, that was like the dream. I wanted a jacket like that.
Yeah, it's great now.
It's good to see it come back.
Yeah, we're going to do a collab on our website and have these available for everybody too.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, you do a lot of that. I mean, there's so much going on with you all the time. And granted, over the last several weeks, we've had some incredible opportunities for the listeners and the viewers of this show to get a lot of this 86 stuff. I really love the Once Upon a Time in Queens promotion you did.
Yeah, those cards are great.
Those cards starting at like $19. And there's such a classic set from,
it's a really cool set. It's something that Topps did back, I think it was 2021 or 2023, whenever that series came out. But they have them in full color also. Like there's some cards are in full color. But to me, the black and white color just looks
I like
awesome.
the black and white better.
And then them signed in orange is just like a game changer. And like they just look so cool. So every time we get an opportunity, one of the guys that has a card in that set, we're just doing a bunch of them, at least 50 to 100 of each player. And they just keep selling and people love them. And I mean, they're affordable, which is great. And I mean, it's a really cool set to collect. I've started one. There's the Lenny, Doc, and Daryl triple card. That's almost done. So Daryl's going to sign them this week, and those will be done. And then
we'll all three of them on one card?
All three of them on one card, all signed in orange.
What's the card look like?
It's the scene of them in the dugout, the three of them when they're sitting there in the dugout. It's like the famous picture of the three of them.
Yeah.
So that's the picture, and it's a black and white of it. And I had Lenny sign them, and then Doc signed them. And Daryl was supposed to sign them like a couple days after Doc did, but he ended up taking a flight out and leaving early. So he's actually back in town this week, and I'm seeing him Wednesday or Thursday. He'll finish his. And then I started some more because I only did about 25 of them, the original batch. So I started another 50 more with Lenny a couple weeks ago. Doc's coming in on Thursday. He'll sign those, and then I'll probably just do all of them with Daryl so that I have like a good supply of them because it's going to be a great card. It's going to be a great price. It's going to be like a $99 item, signed by three of them. It's a really cool looking card. And this orange is, like I said, just a game changer. It looks so cool.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff that you have out there, I mean, it's so innovative and it's just like unique and different. This week, I mean, there's some cool stuff this week. Two of the hottest rookies not just on the New York Mets, but in baseball, of course.
Yeah.
Nolan, McLean, and Carson, Benge.
Yeah, McLean's playing great.
And this week you got a couple of offers featuring them. You got a signed Benge baseball and a signed Nolan McLean baseball as well.
We did dual baseballs signed by each guy, and then if people want to, we do sell a dual Mets display case, which is really cool. So it has spots for 2 baseballs and the Mets logo etched on it, which is a really cool, nice, great display piece for 2 baseballs. So that's a perfect little set for 2 rookies. So that we have those on our website as well. But yeah, it's just these guys are hot, and McLean especially has just been, unfortunately he's kind of getting, what do we call it, DeGrommed.
He's getting DeGrommed.
A little bit.
No run support.
No run support, but I mean, he's pitching great, and we really thought, there was some worry at the end of last season that teams would figure out a little bit of his whatever his tell was to what stuff is. But I mean, the movement on his baseballs is just unbelievable.
Yeah,
it's been unbelievable, and they haven't been able to figure it out yet. So, he's getting through the lineup more than once, and he's still striking guys out late in games, and that's important.
Yeah,
important.
So these are, 2 fresh items from 2 of the hottest Met players of this season, and 2 rookies. It's always good to have, because these prices usually, if they're really going to succeed, the prices go up. So, right. You're taking advantage of both of these guys being rookies, and
absolutely,
and they could literally turn out to be
great players
for a long time here on the New York Mets. So. Great to have those. And then you also, as always, keep booking these very unique watch parties with Mets legends. And you got another one coming up with one half of the Wall boys.
Yeah.
Wally Backman is coming up on June 3rd.
Yeah, we have him June 3rd. It's a Wednesday afternoon game, actually. It's at 3:40.
I think they're playing Seattle.
Seattle, it's a road game for them. Yep. So they're out on the road, but it's a 3:40 Eastern game. So that'll be a fun little Wednesday afternoon game with Wally. I'm sure he'll be entertaining as always for the crowd on a nice afternoon game. Mm-hmm. So that'll be out at Rudy's Bar Grill out in Patchogue, which is a lot of fun. We've been out there quite a few times now. I had Jose Reyes out there twice. I've had Hojo out there once. I had Jesse Orozco out there. Now we've got Wally. I've also done some stuff with the Islanders at that place. So the owner, Mike's a great dude. Big Met fan, big Islander fan. Like tattooed Met fan, Islander fan, like hardcore. And great guy. Food's awesome. Atmosphere's cool. And Wally's going to enjoy it, and the fans are going to love him.
Yeah, so that's coming up once again, June the 3rd, out on Long Island. Rudy's on Route 112 in Patchogue. Wally Backman doing a watch-along, a meet and greet, signing autographs, and I'm sure you'll have a table set up there with a bunch of really cool Met stuff for the fans. So go out there on June the 3rd. And another thing that you're doing, you typically do stuff also with celebrities that are basically not even sports related, but one that caught my eye because it was one of my favorite movies of all time was A Bronx Tale. And you just completed a signing with Chaz Palminteri last week. Chaz, of course, along with De Niro, one of the stars of that fabulous, iconic movie. So you had him sign a number of different things. You had fans there as well. But some of the unique items that you had him sign were pretty cool, including some of the inscribed baseballs. And one was like Mickey Mantle doesn't pay your rent or something.
Yeah, so we did. He's got so many iconic quotes from that movie. But the big ones for baseball, obviously, is the Mickey Mantle thing. That whole scene about where, he's trying to explain to the kid that Mickey Mantle doesn't care about him, and the kid's, when he's in the beginning of the movie, the kid's all about baseball and the Yankees and Mickey Mantle, and he knows all the stats. And Chaz comes in as this kind of like figure going, at the end of the day, these guys, they don't care, And I don't know if that quote was ever an actual quote in the movie, Mickey Mantle won't pay your rent, but there's that reference to it of like, if you're short on rent, like Mickey Mantle's not coming in to save your day. So we found Mickey Mantle had a logo baseball created by the Yankees like late 90s, early 2000s, and it was for probably Mickey Mantle Day or whatever the occasion was that Rawlings made this logo ball. So I bought up as many as I could find, and they're pretty old, so there weren't that many out there. I probably got about 24 of them. So I had Chaz sign them under the Mickey Mantle logo and then write Mickey Mantle won't pay your rent. So that was a big baseball item that was really cool. But to me, I thought the most unique item that we did was the red convertible car, the die-cast, 124 model. And I had Chaz sign them on the front hood, and on the back hood, right, give her the door test. Which, those are sold out in 12 hours. I don't even know if I had them for that long. As soon as I put them up on the website, they were gone.
That's where you open the door for the girl.
Yeah. That's what he says.
And if she opens the door for you,
he says, you open it. He says you lock both the doors before you get it. When you bring the girl the car, you open it with your key and you let her in, and then you walk around the back of the car. And he's like, through the back rearview mirror, you look, and if that girl doesn't reach over and open that lock for you to get in, you dump her.
Yeah.
There's
a lot of classic sayings from that.
Great, yeah. So give her the door test.
And now you can't leave,
Now you can't leave is my best selling.
I love that one.
Yeah. We had somebody come into the public. It was funny. So a guy came in for the public. He had not pre-bought tickets. He ended up buying like 9 tickets at the door and all different types of items. The custom Funko Pops that we made, some photos, and 2 cars. And so he comes up to the table. I'm sitting there with Chaz, and he has Chaz sign the card, and then he writes on the back. He says, "Can you write on the back, Laura passed?" So he looks up. He goes, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I did it to my wife, and she passed. So my son's going to give it to her." It says Laura. So that was his wife's name, like Laura passed the door test. So I thought he got a lot. He got a chuckle out of that. I got a laugh out of that. I'm like, that's great.
Yeah. Well, a lot of great things always at Coachs Collectibles NY.com. And we want to remind everybody once again to use the promo code that we talk about every week. It's TC Show.
Mm-hmm.
You get your free shipping, and also 10% of sales go to a great cause, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. So,
yeah, absolutely.
We really appreciate you coming on as you do from time to time and let us know what's going on with Coachs Collectibles. And go to Coachs Collectibles NY.com, but follow Dom and the company on Instagram, Facebook. So you have big followings on both of those, and that's where you can learn about all this stuff. And we collab on a lot of these posts as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's where we put up the most, some daily specials. So, I mean, our Instagram story and Facebook story is always good stuff coming up, and the stuff usually goes fast. So the best is just to follow and, keep an eye out for things like that. And we're always throwing up, anytime there's breaking news, it's always going to go to social media first.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And you do it quite well. So Dom, thank you so much for your time, and we'll talk to you real soon.
My pleasure, John. Thank you.
Well, let's tell you about next week's show. Coming back for the first time this season, Mets Hall of Famer Johnny Franco will join us, so we look forward to that. And before we wrap it up, we want to remind you to follow the show on our growing Facebook page. We picked up another 300 new followers there this week alone. The Terry Collins Show page on Facebook is fast becoming one of the places where TC fans can follow this show and interact with each other. Just go to facebook.com/The Terry Collins Show. Like our page there, and we're also on X and Instagram, where you can follow TC and the show there. For the best video content from this show, just go to our YouTube channel. Every full episode since the debut of the show in 2024 is there, and we release highlights from each and every show almost every day. So subscribe now by going to youtube.com/The Terry Collins Show. That'll wrap up this edition of the Terry Collins Show. Thanks to our creative director, Marsh, and to our researcher, Dominic DiBiase. For Terry Collins, this is John Arezzi. Thanks for joining us, and have a great week, everyone.